So at this point, I wanted to make sure there was an opportunity to address any questions that came up in either my presentation or in Anna's demonstration. And again, you can, either type those in the chat or the question pane, or even raise a hand, so we can unmute you. While folks are thinking of that, I did want to sort of highlight that the resources, well, for one, that this training is being recorded, and we will be sort of making these resources available through our sort of network page. Again, this is where you can sort of register for updates and learn more about, how to engage with the portal. We have a page with some of the great resources that we were able to collect at our previous network meeting that we'll be building on with this webinar series. And we'll sort of be building this out. So you'll be able to find the links here, whether they're on this page or in a series of GitHub pages. We're going to be making these resources available. It looks like something came through. So this is from Alison Bailey. What anti-aliasing options do you usually use and why?
We tend to use both of the anti-aliasing options that come up when you publish the service. The first one pertains to the actual data and the lines. So sometimes when, actually if you were to see my screen now, I could kind of show you the jagged lines that I was talking about. Okay, so you can see in this line here is a bit jagged. What anti-aliasing does is actually smooth out these lines so they don't appear jagged when they shouldn't be. I could possibly show that in that service in ArcGIS.com. So it's supposed to smooth out these lines here. And the same is for text. Like sometimes text could look a little like it has vertices in it when it actually doesn't. So we force anti-aliasing on the text, which is automatically set up by default when you go through and publish a service, and we also do the normal anti-aliasing setting for the data.
Great. Alton also asked which level?
I'm not sure what that question's.
Oh, sorry. Looks like you might have answered that. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Anna?
Did Andy's question already get asked?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Related to the scale of publishing multiple layers.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, obviously this was a excellent sort of opportunity for us to dive a little bit deeper into this particular technology. The Ocean Data Portal makes great use of these services, and so we're going to be encouraging additional sort of we'll be taking suggestions for additional webinar topics to focus on over the coming months, both in some of the other OGC side of things, the open source side of things, as well as other best practices. There is another question from Alton. For the unique ID, does it automatically assign if you add the new layer to your MXD, I think related to your dynamic layer ID.
Right. If you don't have that set and you add the layer in, it will automatically renumber the layer IDs in order, which is why you might be writing over one that is already published. With the new settings, we have actually not really played around with that much because we're just migrating to 10.3. So I will be interested to see if it does automatically update that. I would assume that it would give you the same number that it would want to, and that you would have to manually go in and change it, but that's just my assumption.
Thank you.
Add a layer in and see what it does. So I just, real quick, I just tested that. I added a layer in, and it actually assigned, it added it to the middle of the layers, and it assigned it a layer ID of 14. So it actually wouldn't affect anything that currently exists. So you don't have to manually go in and change it, which is nice.
That is good. And so I think as we begin to develop this series and this collection of resources for the network, we'll be, again, interested in topics and suggestions of presenters that can speak to those topics and share their expertise with the rest of the network. So I am seeing another kind of question from Tanya Haddad related to, Anna, are there any best practices you suggest around service naming?
Yes. Some groups tend to use their own internal naming structure that they're privy to, like abbreviations, what have you. We, within the Marine Cadastre project, actually like to spell everything out. So, I guess it's your own personal preference, but we tend to not use abbreviations. We will spell out all the words in the service, and we're just trying to use something that's pretty descriptive about the layers that are in the service. Our general overarching, somewhat concise name that pertains to what that service is really about. So some of our services actually are just for a story map, so we'll put the title of the story map and add story map to the end, so we know that that's specific to that map. I guess it really comes down to personal preference and how you want users to stumble onto your information.
Right. Yeah, I think the descriptive names are definitely useful for us as we're looking at these. Tanya also asks, are there any best practices around sort of how you're grouping layers within the Cadastre project, within your services, in terms of how you define what goes into a service?
Yeah, I'm gonna request access again.
Oh, sure.
Okay, can you see our REST page here? Can you see the REST page?
I'm guessing people can. Again, mine is a little bit weird.
Okay.
Definitely.
So some of these are tile cache services, and with tile cache services, depending on the layers that you have in them, we tend to only just be able to have one layer in them because it fuses all the layers together into one image, and if you have layers of the same geography, you can't really have them drawn on top of each other and displayed in the tile cache. So that's why most of our tile cache services only have one layer in them. For this one, this pertains to a story map. All these layers are used in that story map. So we tend to be a little thematic when it comes to our services in this project. All of these layers come from this one avian study that was done by BOEM and NCOS and USGS. And so it also depends on how much data are in the layers. So because this is actually just one data layer, but can be viewed in all these different methods. So it looks like there's 34 layers in here, but it's actually only referencing one layer, and that's why it's its own service. But we also have the thematic services like I showed you, the one I showed you. This pertains to all navigation and marine transportation layers. Our ocean energy layers are about the same. And this service right here actually kind of just feeds into our National Viewer application. So I guess it all depends on, how you plan on using the services yourself in your organization and inside your applications, as well as how you want that to come across to your users still.
Great. Well, I think maybe that's a great place to end it. I really want to thank you, Anna, for taking the time and effort to share with us sort of what you go through and your best practices. Again, these training resources will be made available through our network site in the coming days. And yes, please stay tuned for future webinars. And if there's topics that you'd like to cover or like to have us cover, please email me at todd.r.holobeck@gmail.com, and we will get to those topics. So thanks again, everyone, for joining, and especially thanks, Anna, for leading this demonstration.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, for giving me the opportunity.